From the vaulted depths of the Vatican's restricted archives emerges the fragmented prophecies of Marcien, the ill-fated Roman seer first encountered in our Miracles episode. Marcien was blessed or cursed with visions that blurred the lines between history and the unknowable terrors lurking beyond. Fragments, by Sinclair. And then I saw that the men who his son, the great king, had sent out to the west were come to the shores of the great inland sea, which no man of Europe had before then ever seen. And I felt the men's joy. They cried out, "Ocean, ocean, we are come to the great ocean sea." For they thought they were come to one of the ocean's gulfs, to the end of the world, and that the king would soon turn for home. All the fighting, suffering and toil done. But when they tasted the water and found it only slightly brackish, some of them began to suspect the truth. And then they met the poor wretches who lived in mean huts in the dunes. The peasants told them the waters were landlocked. I felt sorry for the men. The king's soldiers wondered much at the poor natives. So beaten down by misery, they were not afraid of the armed strangers come among them. These local people who lived without woven cloth and metal goods of any kind. And they learned from them of the island with no name, of the temple not to be described, of the beings who walked like men and talked, but were not human, of how the beings thought the flesh of children toothsome, of how they sometimes carried off maidens, of how they kept some of the people always on the island, so the others could not run away, always aged, well-loved parents or little babies, and some of the young men as slaves, for they would most cruelly slay them if any tried to flee, and of the names I am sorry to have to write. I promised to make an offering for having written them. Yog-Sothoth Dagon. One man there was an Athenian, and like the king, a student of Aristotle. The colour left his face when he heard those names, and he and some strong companions recrossed the waste and told these things to the king, who was very angry. And Alexander himself went to the shores of the inland sea. With all his men, he had the parts of ships dragged up and assembled on the shore. The island with no name was assailed from all sides, and the monsters howled with fear. The king and his men were a very different business than poor near-naked people, who even in their poverty had offered the king's scouts, fish, fresh water, and a roof after their journey over the waste. Of all my visions, I would only see these devils' terror once again. All the monsters were crucified. Alexander did not think it meet that they look at him, so he had their eyes put out. The things they screamed were so terrible, he had their tongues pulled out. The temple not to be described was utterly destroyed. This Jupiter showed to me. Child of Troy, child of Aneaus, child of the 7 hills, listen to me. Do not let foreign men tempt you. Do not let them tempt you to go onto the plains of the river Damnos when the moon is full. Do not let them teach you the rites of the Magna Mater, for they will lead you far away. Take you to far Britannia, to the valley of the misty Thamos, and your bodies will fill the pens unseen. Your bones will be scattered in darkness, no masks taken of your faces, devoured by rats. Your blood will flow into rivers that run only in darkness out to the great sea. For you will not listen to me. Here is wisdom. Let he who can understand. What burrowed from below? What was more than an ape, but less than a woman? She had fled into darkness, because she brought forth that whose head was higher than her kin, that which chattered more than they. What was birthed in the cavern above the valley? What was it that devoured its own kindred? You will not listen to me. This Jupiter showed to me. In the land of the Boii, who dwell in the Valley of the Po, there is a certain wood. These Celts say it is close to the land of Dream. Men sometimes disappear in this wood, and small grey and brown shapes move furtively in the shadows, and I heard a name I do not know, Zeugs. This Jupiter showed to me. I journeyed into Apulia, into the grain country, to see my brother, he who I love and who once loved me, to where he dwelled above the valley of the Ophidius, to where he dwelt in a town called Cannae, and that night ascending came to me. I saw the plain turn to blood, and the blood spelled the name Barca. May that name be cursed 1,000 times, and the river's waters were gone. But it still flowed, but with the tears of mothers, daughters, wives, sisters. And in the morning, when I woke, all the fires in the town were out, and I was compelled to speak. As I am always compelled, and they cursed me, and drove me away, as they always have. This Jupiter showed to me. I, who am a kindly man, who would never sell my slaves away from their families, nor harm them. In the days when I had a home, who likes music, and good red wine, and pretty women, but only happy ones, free to chatter and laugh. Would love to tell a strong young man, he will come back from the wars unwounded, to boast to his brothers, also home safe, and tell him of a pretty maid soon to be met by the roadside. I, who would also wish to tell the maid of the little baby boy, she will deliver safe and easily, like a seed from a pod at the turn of the tide, even as her father passed, that the boy will have his mouth. Tell them both of his pride and her satisfaction, when at the presentation he takes the child into the fold of his toga, in strong arms, and sees the babe has eyes like his mother. When she sang to him small and helpless, even as his wife will soon sing to his son, that they will grow old, and beloved by grandchildren, and say as an old man and woman, remember dear Marcien, and the happy tidings he told, telling the tale to the children, who laugh. But I am only given to see horrible things from far strange places, and terrible happenings that fill my heart with dread, so that I'm always afraid and sometimes fear to sleep. The fair maid who sees me turns grey and clasps her hands over her belly. She thinks of tragic things that are not spoken of left abandoned on lonely hillsides. The young man becomes angry and fearful. He and his brothers take up cudgels and drive me away. The Roman prophet Marcien, 3rd century BCE. Books 3rd, 5th. Extant only in fragments. Vatican Library. Restricted section. And so we reach the end of the fragmented visions of the prophet Marcien. His narrations have woven together strands of ancient history, cosmic horror, and forbidden knowledge from the depths of antiquity. What other prophetic fragments lie waiting in obscurity? What other past seers succumbed to madness after their cosmic revelations? The veil between our world and realms of existential terror remains eternally thin. That's all for today's episode, and if you haven't met our prophet Marcien, I suggest you to check out on Miracles episode on this channel.